Tonight we slip behind the velvet curtain and into the tiny booth where the dreams of others are made to shimmer and twitch. The air smells of machine oil, warm dust, and something faintly sweet, celluloid, maybe, or nostalgia itself pretending to be candy. You stand there, coat collar turned up, hands already a little grimy from yesterday's show. The city outside hasn't woken yet, but the theater never really sleeps. It just dozes, humming softly through the walls. You probably won't survive this, by the way. Not dramatically, just statistically. Most projectionists in the silent era developed coughs that never left, and some were unlucky enough to go out in a flash of nitrate flame. But don't worry, for tonight you're immortal, at least for the length of a reel. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the narrow projection booth, careful not to trip over the spools of film sleeping like coiled snakes. The wooden floor creaks under your boots, and a faint draft stirs the loose pages of the projection log. Outside, dawn glows behind soot-streaked windows, but in here, the sun is an unwelcome intruder. The booth belongs to the night. Your fingers find the switches and knobs by instinct. You touch the projector's frame, a hulking steel contraption, dented, dependable, and moody as a mule. It's called a Powers 6A, built around 1912, and you know it sounds the way a musician knows a favorite instrument. The slow, grinding crank. The steady whir that hums like a heartbeat. The occasional cough that tells you it's about to misbehave. A good projectionist, they say, can feel the machine's moods. You sometimes whisper to yours, as though coaxing a cat from under a bed. A light pat on the casing, a quiet word. Not that anyone would hear you over the clatter anyway. The theater below is empty now, save for a caretaker mopping up the marble foyer. The mop squeaks in rhythm, faintly audible through the vent. You imagine the silent movie stars down there, cardboard Valentino, paper Mary Pickford, staring from their posters, waiting for you to breathe them back into motion. On your desk lies a half-eaten biscuit and a stack of film reels labeled in chalk, The Mystery of the Silver Dagger, tonight's feature. The reels are heavy, their tin lids scratched by years of careless fingers. You lift one, feeling the weight of captured light. Each reel runs about 20 minutes, which doesn't sound long until you've cranked through it by hand. You thread a leader through the projector's gate, fingers moving automatically. Threading film is an art, and one mistake, a loop too tight, a gear skipped, could turn beauty into confetti. You've seen it happen. Everyone has. The first time you melted a frame, it looked almost alive, writhing before it bubbled into nothing. You laughed, then felt guilty for laughing. A faint tap sounds on the booth door. It's the caretaker, Gus, still wearing his overalls and holding a broom like a musket. "Morning, champ," he says. "Heard the new reel came in. Any good?" You shrug. Mystery, romance, and probably one horse chase. The usual. He grins, showing the same gap-toothed smile he's had since before the war. "Long as it ain't another educational picture. Last one near put me in a coma." "Educational's the worst kind of fiction," you mutter, and he laughs his way back down the stairs. You return to your work, gently turning the reels, listening for that faint, perfect balance of weight and tension. The smell of burning dust wafts up from the lamp house, a comforting, if slightly alarming scent. Historians still argue whether projectionists of the silent era were craftsmen or glorified janitors, but you know the truth, you're both. The artist and the custodian of illusion. Outside, a tram bell clangs. Someone shouts for the morning paper. The world is awake, but you live in reverse. Your day begins as others end. You spend your hours coaxing life from shadows, your hands smelling of grease and nitrate instead of soap and ink. A gust rattles the booth window. You glance out to see a cat stalking along the theater's sign. Half the bulbs are dead, leaving the word palace spelled as P__E. It feels poetic somehow, half a dream missing, waiting for you to fix it. You check the clock, 7:12 a.m. The matinee isn't until 10, but you like to be early. There's comfort in ritual, oiling the sprockets, checking the shutter blades, cleaning the gate with soft cloth and patience. The reel hums in your hands like a living thing. Some projectionists swear by a trick: whisper the film's title 3 times before showing it, to keep it from breaking. You tried that once, half as a joke, and the reel didn't jam all night. So you keep doing it. Not superstition, you tell yourself. Tradition. As you lean against the booth's narrow window, you look down at the empty rows of seats. Velvet, once red, now faded to rust. You imagine the crowd to come, lovers holding hands, businessmen pretending not to cry, children craning for the villain's face. They'll all gasp in unison at the same flicker of light, unaware of the solitary figure making it all happen. For a moment, you envy them, their shared illusion, their forgetting. But then you remember, you see the world twice. Once as it is, and once as it pretends to be. You adjust the lamp, letting the beams spill faintly across the booth wall. Dust dances in the path of light, tiny motes twirling like forgotten extras from yesterday's show. You hold up your hand, let the glow wash over your fingers, and feel absurdly powerful. You are the keeper of light, the conjurer of ghosts. A small card pinned above the desk catches your eye. Do not touch the carbon rods with bare hands. The boss wrote that after you burned yourself last spring. You smile faintly, remembering how you swore loud enough to wake the entire orchestra pit. Gus thought it was part of the movie. The projector coughs once, like clearing its throat, and settles again. The day stretches ahead, flickers, shadows, and the low, steady whir of your mechanical companion. Somewhere out there, the city grinds toward noon, but in this booth, time already feels optional. You wipe your hands on a rag, stand still, and listen to the silence. Pure, complete, the kind that only exists before the first reel begins to turn. The quiet doesn't last. It never does. By the time the first week sunlight has crawled past the billboard outside, the booth has already come alive again. You stretch, roll your shoulders, and glance at the clock. 8:43. Still early, but the work never truly stops. The Powers 6A may be your companion, but it's also a jealous one, demanding attention, grease, and just the right amount of affection to keep it from eating film for breakfast. You reach for the little oil can, that dented metal teardrop that's been in the booth longer than you. A quick squeeze at the gears, a dab on the shutter assembly. The smell is sharp, comforting, and faintly toxic, like your life choices. The old lamp house looms before you, black and boxy, a dragon waiting to breathe light. You know every part of it. The sprocket rollers, the intermittent mechanism, the fire shutter that mostly works. It's mechanical poetry, in a way. Just loud, smoky poetry. Below, faint thumps echo through the theater. The caretaker, Gus, is rearranging chairs, mumbling to himself about kids with sticky candy fingers. You grin. The man talks more to ghosts than to people. Some mornings, you wonder if the building listens. As you crank the handle experimentally, the reels turn with satisfying precision. The flicker of the empty frame dances across the booth wall. That flicker is your pulse now. You measure time not in hours, but in frames per second. 16, to be exact. Sometimes you go a little faster, if the reel's dragging, but the audience never notices. Or maybe they do, and that's part of the charm. Life a little too quick for comfort. There's a knock at the booth door. "Delivery for you," calls a voice. You unlatch the bolt, and the boy from the distributor slides a wooden crate inside. He's barely 16, all elbows and cheekbones. Came straight from the exchange, he says, trying not to look impressed by the machinery. They say this one's hot. You raise an eyebrow. Hot as in popular, or hot as in might ignite if I breathe wrong? He shrugs. Both, maybe. Then he's gone, already whistling his way down the hall. You pry open the crate. Inside, another set of reels, unmarked except for a slip of paper that says News Weekly number 47. You'll run it before the main feature, some war footage, maybe, or the latest celebrity scandal. The audience loves to hiss or cheer between frames. As you lift the reel, a faint static kiss passes through your fingertips. Nitrate film. The kind that can catch fire at the temperature of a warm cup of tea. You've seen theaters go up in minutes. One town over, a projectionist sneezed at the wrong time and took the whole second floor with him. You handle the reel gently, like an unexploded idea. By now, the faint notes of a piano drift upward from the stage below. Someone's tuning it, probably Lila, the pianist who insists on rehearsing in minor keys even when the movie's a comedy. You can almost hear her muttering as she plays, experimenting with scales like a scientist dissecting joy. Morning, sunshine, she calls up through the vent. You ready for today's tragedy? Always, you call back. Same as yesterday's. She laughs, a low, lilting sound that floats through the ductwork. I put in a new waltz for the romantic bits. Think the audience will notice. Only if it catches fire, you answer, and she sends up a faint, mock gasp. You turn back to the projector, the moment fading. Beneath the calm rhythm of oil and gears, you can feel something alive, a pulse older than electricity, the heartbeat of stories. When you were younger, you thought movies were magic. Now you know they're just math and light. But somehow, that doesn't make them less miraculous. Historians still argue whether the silent projectionist was an artist or just an operator. You've read the old articles. The engineers insisting it's all mechanics, the critics insisting it's all emotion. You figure it's both, like making tea. You can boil water without meaning, but the ritual matters. A gust rattles the booth's window, scattering a few curled film scraps on the desk. You pick one up, hold it to the light. A woman's face, half a smile, eyes frozen mid-blink. For a heartbeat, she seems to look right at you. You wonder who she was. A forgotten actress, maybe. The frame flickers with dust, and you set it aside before you start believing in ghosts again. Down below, Gus sneezes. You hear the echo of his voice bouncing through the empty hall. The sound reminds you that the world still exists beyond this booth. Sometimes you forget. You take a sip from your tin mug of lukewarm coffee, mostly grounds by now, and grimace. The drink tastes like despair and nickel polish. You mutter to yourself, breakfast of champions, and wipe your mouth with a sleeve. Your hand lands on the splicer, that small device with its blade dull from use. You run a strip of film through it, practicing a clean cut and cement join. There's an odd satisfaction in repairing something that most people will never know broke. Like mending time. By 9:30, the theater starts to hum with life. Voices echo in the lobby, the box office bell jingles, and someone, probably the manager, starts shouting about crooked posters. You hear Lila play the first full tune of the morning, something tender but a little out of tune, like a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. You glance at the clock again. Almost showtime. You test the projector one last time, your hand steady on the crank. The machine purrs, content for now. Then, from the corner of your eye, you catch movement. A shadow on the far wall, shaped like a man with a hat. You blink, but there's nothing there, just the dance of the sunlight through the window slats. The mind plays tricks. especially on too little sleep and too much caffeine. Still, you whisper under your breath, "Don't start haunting me yet. We've got 14 hours to go." Your routine continues. A touch more oil, a wipe of the lens, a careful winding of the take-up reel. You move without thinking now, every gesture precise and quiet. The hum of the motor fills the booth, blending with the muffled piano below. The smell of grease and dust hangs thick, strangely soothing. Soon, the lights downstairs will dim, and the crowd will fall silent. They'll never see you up here, hidden behind the square window of the booth, but they'll feel your presence in every flicker, every jump cut, every perfectly timed fade. You are the ghost that lives between the frames. The machine whirs again, steady, alive. You take a breath, flex your fingers, and prepare to make shadows dance. The first hour of theater life always feels like a half-remembered dream, quiet at first, then suddenly full of shouting and perfume. You step out of the booth for a moment, blinking as you move from the oily gloom into the brighter haze of the lobby. The faint smell of disinfectant mixes with popcorn salt, and posters the size of bedsheets hang from the walls, each one promising more glamour than the world can actually provide. You help Gus hang the newest poster, a lavish illustration of the mystery of the silver dagger. The heroine stares out from the paper, eyes painted wide in terror, while a man in a hat looms behind her, knife glinting. The artist clearly never saw a real dagger in his life. You smooth the edges with your palm, noticing the corners already curling from humidity. "Needs more paste," Gus mutters. "Or less humidity," you say, tapping a bubble near the heroine's cheek. "Maybe one day they'll make posters that don't melt by lunchtime." He snorts. "Maybe one day they'll make films that talk." You laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. If people wanted their movies to talk, they'd just stay home and argue with their families." It earns a short chuckle before he shuffles away, mop in hand. You watch him go, admiring his commitment to grumpiness. It's almost an art form. Across the lobby, the ticket booth glows softly, a little aquarium of brass and glass. Inside sits Vera, the ticket girl, counting coins with a kind of rhythmic grace. She's been working here 6 months and already knows everyone's secrets. You approach the window, tapping lightly. "Morning, Vera." She doesn't look up. "If you're here to borrow change again, the answer's no." "Not this time," you say, holding up your hands. "I came to ask an important historical question." That gets her attention. "Oh really?" You nod, lowering your voice like a conspirator. "Do you think Rudolph Valentino's mustache is real?" She stares at you for a beat, then bursts out laughing. "Of all the things you could wonder about, you choose that." "I need to know. The integrity of the projectionist profession depends on it." She rolls her eyes. "It's real. Probably insured for more than this whole theater." Historians still argue whether it was real, you counter with mock solemnity, or a carefully maintained illusion designed to seduce Middle America. She snorts again, then leans closer. "Speaking of illusions, the manager says we're running short on film cement. Try not to break anything today." You salute. "As if I'd ever break anything deliberately." She arches a brow. "Last week's reel of Cupid in a canoe says otherwise." "Mechanical malfunction," you insist. "A tragic accident, really. Could have happened to anyone. Anyone who sneezes directly onto a reel." You grin. "Occupational hazard." By now, a few early patrons are filtering in, mostly elderly couples, 2 sailors on leave, a mother with a restless toddler who insists on stomping his boots. Vera slides tickets through the slot, her fingers quick as piano keys. You linger a moment longer, half listening to the rhythm of coins and chatter. It's comforting, like the murmur of an old friend. Then the manager's voice booms from behind you. You. Back to the booth. You turn, pretending not to flinch. Mr. Hargreaves, the theatre manager, looks like he was born frowning. His mustache droops at both ends, perpetually unimpressed. "Yes, sir," you say, already stepping toward the stairs. "And make sure the reels aren't scratched this time," he adds. "We've got a critic from the Tribune in the audience today." You pause mid-step. "A critic? Here. Don't look so shocked. Even vultures have to eat." You make a mental note to double-check everything, even the parts that never go wrong. A critic means attention. And attention, in your line of work, is the last thing you want. The projection booth greets you like an old friend with bad breath. Warm, cramped, familiar. You exhale, shutting the door behind you. For a moment, the outside world feels impossibly far away. You can hear faint music from Lila below, playing a teasing little tune to test the keys. You set the poster paste bucket on the floor, wipe your hands, and check the reel mounts. Everything gleams with readiness, or as close to it as your equipment ever gets. You thread the film with care, whispering the title 3 times under your breath. Your ritual. Down below, Vera's voice drifts faintly upward. Doors closing. Show begins in 5. You glance through the small viewing slot. The lights dim, the chatter fades, and for a brief, perfect moment, the world holds its breath. Then the piano begins, soft, uncertain, like a heartbeat. The first reel starts to turn. Light bursts through the booth window, a beam so bright it could split time itself. Dust particles dance in it, shimmering like tiny souls set free. The opening frame trembles, catches, and steadies. The audience gasps. You feel their collective attention tighten, like a rope drawn taut. You watch the flicker, the rhythm. Each frame a heartbeat. Each second 16 little miracles happening faster than the mind can follow. The story unfolds. Mystery, romance, absurd mustaches. And you are the unseen conductor keeping it alive. Then, out of nowhere, the projector makes a sound you don't like. A tiny hiccup, a metallic stutter. You tense, hand hovering over the speed knob. Another hiccup. You slow the crank, praying it's just dust on the gate. The frame steadies again. Disaster averted. You exhale, grinning to yourself. "Nice try," you whisper to the machine. "Not today." The story continues, the pianist's music swelling. From your little perch above the world, you watch shadows kiss and villains twirl mustache that may or may not be real. Somewhere below, the critic scribbles notes, probably about symbolism or lighting, completely unaware that your heart nearly stopped 30 seconds ago. The reel ends with a dramatic fade. You let the machine wind down, savoring the soft decrescendo of gears. Then, like a magician resetting his trick, you prepare the next reel. Outside the booth, applause breaks out, short, sincere, and full of that fragile joy people get from watching strangers suffer gracefully. You lean back, arms crossed, letting the noise wash over you. It's not your name they are cheering, but it's your work all the same. And you can't help thinking, if Valentino's mustache can command an empire of size, maybe you can command something too, even if it's just a flicker in the dark. The matinee hums to life like a slow heartbeat beneath your feet. You feel it through the floorboards, that collective shuffle of bodies finding seats, programs crackling, whispered arguments over armrests. The smell of perfume and cigarette smoke seeps upward through the vent, mixing with the machine oil and heat of your booth until it's something uniquely theatrical, like electricity flavored with human breath. You glance through the square window, one hand already on the reel. The projector waits, heavy and patient, its mouth filled with celluloid. You adjust the take-up reel, double-check the sprocket loops, and wipe your hands on your shirt. There's no showmanship up here, only precision. Any mistake will be seen by hundreds but noticed by none. The bell rings below. The house lights dim. The pianist clears her throat, a little ritual of her own, and begins to play. The film flickers to life. A woman in a silk dress stands on a cliffside, eyes wide with that familiar, exaggerated terror that silent actresses mastered so well. You can almost hear the audience's collective gasp, though no sound passes through the glass. You crank smoothly, matching the rhythm of the piano. Light and music, two halves of one heartbeat. Your hand moves without thinking. Forward, steady, measured. The projector hums with pleasure, as if approving your tempo. The gears click softly, metal teeth chewing through time. You always like this part, the first few minutes when the illusion is flawless, when no one is yet aware of how fragile it all is. It feels almost sacred. Then a soft pop from the carbon arc jolts you. The light sputters, dims, then steadies again. You reach instinctively for the adjustment lever, nudging it just enough to coax the brightness back. It's like feeding a fire that refuses to admit it's dying. Historians still argue whether projectionists of the silent era were underpaid technicians or underappreciated artists. You figure the truth is somewhere between. You're both the surgeon and the patient. Every show is a minor miracle, pulled from the jaws of chaos. A faint hiss rises from the lamp house, the scent of burning carbon rods mingling with dust. You keep one ear tuned to it, waiting for the telltale crack that means you'll have to change them mid-reel. Nothing yet. You allow yourself a breath. Below, the pianist hits a dramatic chord, Lila's signal for big plot twist. You peer through the tiny window just in time to see the villain step into frame, cape billowing, dagger gleaming like a tin toy under the studio lights. The audience stares. Even up here, you feel the energy shift, the mass hypnosis of collective suspense. Your left hand rests lightly on the tension knob, right hand on the crank. You're half conductor, half priest. The glow of the arc lamp paints your skin silver. The whir becomes a lullaby of friction and rhythm. A thought sneaks in, absurd and warm. Maybe this is what the sun feels like, feeding light to others, unseen and slowly burning itself away. The reel flutters slightly. You catch it, steady it, and glance down at the edge of the film gate. A speck of dust, small, harmless, yet perfectly placed to ruin a moment. You pause, flick it away, and the image clears. Down below, the audience sighs in relief, though they don't know why. You grin. That's the secret joy of the projectionist, saving the world in microseconds, unthanked and unseen. The story below unfolds with perfect rhythm. Lovers separated, detectives confounded, the villain's mustache now practically its own character. The pianist follows along, her music rippling between melancholy and mischief. Occasionally, you can hear her laugh faintly to herself, amused by the absurdity of it all. The machine's hum deepens, the smell of ozone thickens. You know the signs, the reel's nearing its end. The little dot, the changeover cue, appears in the top right corner of the frame. To most, it's invisible. To you, it's everything. The one heartbeat between disaster and continuity. Ready, you whisper, fingers on the second reel. The second cue flashes. You make the swap, a quick, practiced motion. The reels exchange their duties like dancers switching partners mid-step. The picture doesn't even blink. The audience never knows. And just like that, the illusion remains unbroken. You exhale. Another flawless changeover. The tension in your shoulders dissolves. Leaning back, you take a moment to glance around the booth. Everything hums in quiet cooperation. The oil gauge is steady, the take-up reel smooth, the film flowing like a ribbon through gears. You sip the coffee you forgot about earlier. It's gone cold, tasting like burnt toast, but even that feels right. The bitterness matches the smell of the booth. Familiar. Honest. The next scene begins. The heroine faints for the third time, and you murmur, "You could at least try walking out of danger just once." It's a small, private joke between you and the screen. The reel clicks. The image trembles. You tighten the knob again, whispering reassurance to the machine. "Steady now, good girl." The air grows warmer. The lamp's glow paints the dust in golden halos. Sweat beads along your neck. You don't mind. The booth is its own weather system, constant summer with a chance of combustion. You think about how strange it is, this partnership between man and machine. The projector doesn't love you, but it knows you. It responds to your touch, your timing, your superstition. You imagine the first projectionists in the 1890s, hands blistered, hearts pounding, wondering if the light would hold. You're not so different. Somewhere deep in the crowd, a child laughs, a pure, bell-clear sound that slips up through the vents. You freeze for a moment, smiling. That's why you do it. Not for applause, not for art, not even for the paycheck, though that wouldn't hurt. It's for that laugh, a small spark of wonder that says the illusion worked. The reel nears its end again, the rhythm shifting to the familiar crescendo of silent finales. You ready the next spool. The pianist thunders through the closing theme. The villain tumbles dramatically into the ocean, or maybe a puddle, it's hard to tell. The audience cheers. You watch the final frame flutter through the gate, and then, darkness. The lamp clicks off. The hum fades to silence. For a moment, the booth feels like a church after mass, still warm, still echoing, but empty. You stand there in the glow of dying filaments, realizing that you've just shepherded hundreds of strangers through 2 hours of dreams without ever being seen yourself. You smile. You like it that way. The next show will start in an hour, and you'll do it all again. Crank, hum, flicker, breathe. Light in, light out. The matinee audience leaves in a flurry of chatter and rustling coats, and the theater becomes a hollow shell again. You stay in the booth, watching them drift out like a slow tide. In the orchestra pit below, Lila stretches her fingers and shakes her head, muttering something that sounds suspiciously like, "Too many fainting heroines, not enough harmonies." You can't disagree. You check your pocket watch, barely past 2 in the afternoon. The next show starts at 4, which means you've got just enough time to tend to the creature that makes this place breathe. You reach for the small toolbox under the desk, the one with more scars than metal left. The lid creaks open to reveal screwdrivers, brushes, a tiny wrench, and your favorite, an old toothbrush for cleaning the sprockets. It's stained black, but you've never had the heart to replace it. You remove the film still threaded through the gate, coiling it gently onto the reel. The hum of cooling metal fills the air. Every moving part of the projector glistens faintly with sweat and oil, like it too has just run a marathon. You wipe the gears, polish the lens, and feel the quiet satisfaction that only comes from touching something ancient that still works. Below, the pianist hums to herself. You hear her plunk out a few aimless notes, maybe improvising, maybe mocking the villain's melodrama from earlier. You chuckle. She once told you she could score anything, even a funeral or a grocery list, and you believed her. A faint cough interrupts the calm. The sound of a man clearing his throat with authority. You lean out the booth window to see Mr. Hargreaves, the manager, standing in the aisle, hat tilted, hands on hips. "How's my miracle worker?" he calls. "Still breathing," you reply. "Good. Try to stay that way. The insurance paperwork is murder." He laughs at his own joke, then adds, "Critic from the Tribune said the picture looked crisp. Keep that up and maybe I won't dock your pay this week." You grin. "My heart overflows with gratitude." Don't let it overflow onto the film, he mutters, already turning away. You shake your head. Managers. Always worried about pennies while you're juggling sparks. Still, it's a small victory. A good show means fewer angry memos. You turn back to your faithful machine. The carbon rods are nearly spent, thin stubs glowing faintly like dying candles. You unscrew the clamps, replace them with new ones, and adjust the arc gap. The hiss of ignition sounds almost like applause. Historians still argue whether the projectionist's carbon arc lamp was more innovation or hazard. You're firmly in the hazard camp. These rods can burn at 3,000 degrees, hot enough to melt a coin, and occasionally your fingertips. But there's no denying their beauty. The light they produce is soft, silvery, almost alive. You sometimes wonder if it's worth the risk just to see that shimmer one more time. You pick up a rag, wipe the sweat from your face, and lean back against the wall. The booth hums faintly, gears cooling, clock ticking. For a moment, everything feels suspended, like the world outside stopped just to let you breathe. Then a sharp clang echoes up from the pit. You glance down to see Lila crouched over her piano, one shoe off, poking at something. Lose a note, you call. Worse, she says. Dropped my sandwich in the pedals. Tragic, you say solemnly. Historians will argue about this for centuries. She grins up at you. Don't make me play your next reel like a dirge. You laugh and turn back to your work, feeling that familiar comfort of camaraderie through vents and distance. You've never had many friends outside these walls, but inside the palace, everyone speaks the same strange dialect of flicker and echo. The faint scrape of broom bristles signals Gus's return. He trudges up the side aisle, mumbling to himself as usual. People can't hold popcorn like civilized creatures, he growls. Then, glancing up at you, how's your monster doing? She's purring. Good. I'd hate to see her bite back. Remember that fellow in Cincinnati? Boom, whole booth gone. You nod. You've heard the story. Every projectionist has. Sometimes you wonder if it's true or just folklore meant to keep your kind humble. Either way, you keep a bucket of sand by the door. The light slants through the booth window now, slicing across the reels in a golden beam. Dust motes dance lazily, indifferent to your mortal concerns. You feel the warmth on your face, oddly soothing after the constant artificial glow of the lamp. You let yourself drift for a moment, eyes half closed. You think of how strange it is that this job, this strange communion between man and machine, between silence and spectacle, exists at all. Just a handful of years ago, there were no films to project, no reels to thread, no music to synchronize. Now, the entire world comes to darkened rooms just to stare at moving shadows. It feels both absurd and holy. A memory surfaces, your first night on the job. You were terrified, hands shaking so badly you dropped a reel. Gus laughed so hard he nearly swallowed his cigarette. You almost quit. But then the light flickered to life, and the audience gasped, and something inside you clicked into place. You've been chasing that sound ever since. You snap back to the present as the clock strikes 3. Time to rethread, reset, prepare for the next crowd of dreamers. You check the reels again, then glance through the viewing window. The seats are half filled already. A small child waves at you, though they can't possibly see you clearly. Still, you wave back. The orchestra warms up. Lila taps her foot in time with a march. The faint smell of cigarette smoke drifts up again. Somewhere below, the critic from earlier returns for a second viewing, probably hoping for new insights or free air conditioning. You adjust the focus, crank the test reel once more. The image sharpens. Perfect. The lights dim. The pianist strikes the opening chord. And once again, the world turns silver and silent. This time, the villain laughs without sound, the heroine swoons with grace, and the audience leans forward as one, caught in your quiet spell. You keep your breathing steady, your movements small. Every frame counts, every flicker sacred. For 2 hours, you disappear completely, and somehow, that feels like freedom. When the evening crowd files out, the air in the booth feels heavier, as if it has soaked up all their laughter, gasps, and muttered commentary. You stretch, bones popping in protest, and roll your shoulders until something finally snaps back into place. Down below, the ushers sweep in synchronized misery, their brooms scraping like sandpaper against the marble floors. You take a last look through the window. Empty rows, a faint haze from the carbon lamp still drifting in the air. The stage curtain hangs motionless again. The day's illusion is done, but the aftermath remains. Stray programs, scuffed seats, an echo of applause that never quite fades. Your stomach reminds you it exists with a low growl. You glance at your pocket watch, 6:30. Dinner time. You descend the narrow stairs from the booth, each step echoing like a warning. Outside the door, the smell hits first, a comforting mix of old grease, salt, and something pretending to be chicken. The theater's canteen isn't much, just a counter wedged between 2 storage rooms, but it's a haven for the weary. You nod to Mrs. Duval, the woman who's been running the place since before motion pictures learned to crawl. She doesn't look up from her frying pan as she says, "You'll take the usual." "Wouldn't dare change it," you reply. She slides you a plate of overcooked hash and a mug of coffee so thick you could store a wrench in it. "Don't say I never loved you," she mutters. "Historians will argue whether this qualifies as love," you say, and she snorts without missing a beat. You sit at one of the little tables by the wall. The paint is peeling, and someone carved "Charlie was here 1923" into the wood. You eat slowly, grateful for the warmth, even if the food tastes faintly of tin and regret. Across the room, a cluster of stagehands debates the latest scandal, an actress who reportedly ran off with her director and a crate of studio cash. They say she's hiding in France, one claims. "No, Cuba," insists another. You can't help smiling. Even off-screen, the drama never ends. A familiar voice joins the fray, Lila, still in her performance dress, hair now loose and wild. She waves when she sees you, slides into the seat across from yours, and steals one of your fries without apology. "Still alive?" she asks. "Barely. The arc tried to eat my sleeve again." "You and that lamp," she says, shaking her head. "One of these days it's going to win." You raise your mug in mock salute. "Then I'll die doing what I love, sweating in a box full of smoke." She laughs, that low, musical laugh that always sounds like it belongs in a better story than yours. For a moment, the exhaustion lifts. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asks suddenly. You pause mid-bite. "Like what?" "I don't know. Something that doesn't involve nearly going blind every day." You grin. "What?" and miss out on the glamour of manually splicing nitrate film. She leans back. "Fair point. I suppose I could always play piano in a speakeasy instead. Historians would still argue whether you'd make more money." She chuckles again, but her eyes drift toward the floor. There's something wistful there, a longing for somewhere quieter, freer. You know that look. You've caught yourself wearing it, too. Because as much as you love the palace, as much as the projector feels like an extension of your own pulse, there's a part of you that wonders what happens when the lights go out for good. When talkies come, and your booth becomes a relic. You've heard the rumors, microphones on sets, recorded sound, actors actually speaking. It sounds impossible. Or maybe inevitable. The coffee cools between you. Lila's foot taps absent-mindedly against the leg of the table, marking a rhythm you can't quite place. A young usher bows through the door then, face flushed with gossip. "Did you hear?" he says, breathless. "They're testing a picture in New York, one where the actors talk. Like, real talking." Mrs. Duval waves her spatula like a weapon. "If I wanted to hear people talk, I'd listen to you fools arguing about soup." But the room buzzes with curiosity now. The usher swears it's true. The audience in New York supposedly lost their minds. Some laughed, some screamed, one fainted dead away. Lila raises an eyebrow at you. "Talking pictures," she says softly. "Guess we'll all be out of a job soon." You try to brush it off with a smile. "Maybe the machines will learn to run themselves too. Then we can both retire early." But the joke doesn't land. The hum of conversation fills the silence instead. You finish your meal, thank Mrs. Duval, and step back into the hallway. The theater feels strange after hours, dim and cavernous, like it's holding its breath. You wander back up to the booth. Through the glass, the screen glows faintly from the projector's pilot light. The reels are still on the shelf, stacked like sleeping serpents. You run a hand along their metal edges. Cool. Heavy. Reliable. For now. A rat scurries behind the wall, rustling paper. You sigh. Even the pests have tenure here. You sit on the stool, listening to the faint hum of the street outside, the clip of shoes on pavement, a distant car horn, laughter from somewhere unseen. Your reflection in the glass looks older than you remember. Maybe it's the light. Maybe it's the job. You rest your head against the wall and let the exhaustion finally catch up. For a fleeting moment, you imagine what it might be like if the films really did talk. If the characters you've watched flicker and fade every night could look at you and say, "Thank you for keeping the light steady." Then you chuckle softly. They'd probably just complain about the dust on the lens. You close your eyes, drifting somewhere between thought and sleep, the faint smell of nitrate and coffee lingering in the air. Outside, the marquee still glows. Inside, you breathe in the quiet, waiting for the next day, the next reel, the next miracle that might burn your fingers, but still makes you stay. Morning again, and the palace smells faintly of metal polish and ambition. You unlock the booth, push open the door, and breathe in that unmistakable perfume, ozone from the carbon rods, oil from the gears, and the ghost of popcorn from last night's crowd. The city outside is already awake, carriages clattering and the occasional Model T honking like a startled goose. But in here, the day begins slower, softer. You hang your coat on the peg, stretch, and glance out over the empty theater. Light streams through the skylight, revealing the faint shimmer of dust suspended mid-air. Down below, Gus is already sweeping the aisles, muttering as always. "People drop money, but never the kind you can spend," he grumbles, stooping to pick up what looks like a button. You smile. You know his routine as well as your own. Everyone here moves in loops, repeating tasks, repeating jokes, repeating days that blur into each other until you can't tell Tuesday from Saturday. You suppose that's what stability feels like. Or maybe it's just the slow erosion of time disguised as routine. You check the schedule pinned beside the booth window. The afternoon show is a new two-reeler, a romantic tragedy called The Lamp and the Rose. You recognize the studio's name. They're the ones who recently bragged about shooting entirely on location in Italy, though rumor has it Italy was a backlot in New Jersey. Historians still argue whether audiences of the era actually cared about authenticity or just wanted something pretty to stare at. You unspool the first reel, examining the edges. Clean. No tears, no warping. You thread it through the machine, feeling the familiar tension of film sliding between your fingers. The soft click as it locks into place is oddly satisfying, like fastening the last button of a shout. There's a comfort in repetition. Each gesture, each pull of the lever, carries muscle memory older than thought. The booth becomes a tiny kingdom where you know every creak, every quirk. Outside may be chaos, but inside, you are the sovereign of light and shadow. Still, the quiet doesn't last long. A sharp knock on the door interrupts your rhythm. "Delivery," a voice calls. You open it to find a boy in suspenders, cheeks red from the cold, holding a film canister barely bigger than a hatbox. "Special newsreel," he says. "Hot off the press." You sign the slip, hand him a nickel, and set the canister on the table. The label reads, "World News Weekly, Aviators Cross the Atlantic." You whistle softly. "First solo flight," you murmur. "That'll pack the house." The boy grins. They say he barely slept. Flew straight through a storm. You nod, thinking of the courage, or madness, it must take to do something like that. Alone in the sky, engine roaring, ocean endless below. You glance at your projector. In a way, you're not so different. Alone in the booth, staring into a beam of light, guiding others through their illusions. You test the reel. The film stock looks fresh, the image is crisp. The first frame flickers to life, a grainy view of the triumphant pilot, smiling awkwardly beside his plane. The image wobbles slightly, as if the film itself is proud but too exhausted to stand straight. When the matinee crowd arrives later, they'll cheer. They always do for heroes. The orchestra will swell with a triumphant march, and for a moment, everyone will forget their worries. You'll stand behind the glass, unseen, invisible, making sure that moment lasts. But for now, it's just you, the booth, and a bit of film that somehow captures history before it cools. You set it aside and turn to your regular reels. Lila arrives soon after, yawning and balancing a steaming mug on her sheet music. "Morning, Captain of the Flickers," she says. "Morning, Queen of the Keys." She eyes the newsreel. "Ah, the flying fellow. Think he'll make people cry?" "Only if the piano's good." She smirks. "Then prepare the tissues." You grin, feeling a small warmth at her confidence. You've seen her make entire audiences gasp with a single chord. Once, during a particularly tense chase scene, she pounded so hard on the keys that a man in the front row actually ducked. She still considers it her greatest artistic achievement. The hours drift by in small tasks, oiling gears, adjusting the gate tension, checking the feed rollers. You pause once to watch a sliver of sunlight trace across the wall. The dust motes move in slow ballet, and you imagine each one a tiny audience member, patiently waiting for the next show. At noon, Gus clambers up with a paper bag. "Lunch," he grunts, tossing it onto the desk. Inside, a sandwich that looks as though it fought valiantly before losing. "Generous as always," you say. He grins, missing a tooth. "Don't say I never treat you right." You share half with Lila, and she hums thoughtfully between bites. "You ever wonder," she says, "if the people who made these films thought about us? The ones showing them, playing for them?" You consider it. "Probably not. We're the ghosts behind the curtain." She nods. "Guess that makes us hauntingly underpaid." You laugh, nearly choking on your sandwich. The afternoon crowd starts filtering in, chattering and fanning themselves. Outside, the street noise fades beneath the heavy velvet doors. You dim the house lights, signal Lila, and the magic begins again. The new film is beautiful, in a tragic sort of way. Lovers separated by misunderstanding, reunited just in time for one to die dramatically in the other's arms. Silent cinema's favorite pastime. You watch through the window as the audience leans forward, breath held, caught in the illusion you maintain. And yet, midway through the reel, something odd happens. A flicker, not from the lamp, but from the film itself. A flash of light, then a frame out of place. The lovers' faces distort for a heartbeat, replaced by a strange pattern, almost like someone else's shadow intruding on their story. You blink, check the real tension. Everything seems fine. The audience doesn't react. Maybe it was just a splice error. But for a moment, you feel as though someone, or something, looked back at you through the frame. Lila catches your eye from below, eyebrows raised in question. You shake your head, forcing a grin. The show must go on, after all. When it ends, the audience bursts into applause, and you release the breath you didn't realize you were holding. Another performance, another perfect illusion. You rewind the reels, your fingers trembling just slightly. The image still lingers in your mind, the ghost flicker. Historians still argue whether projectionists ever truly saw things on film that weren't there. You're not sure you'd win that argument either way. You shut off the lamp, the booth sinking into half darkness, and for a moment, you swear the room feels almost alive. You arrive the next morning earlier than usual, half out of habit, half out of unease. The ghost flicker from yesterday still nags at you like a whisper behind your thoughts. Maybe it was just a splice, you tell yourself again. Maybe a stray frame from another reel. It happens. Still, the way it seemed to look back unsettles you more than you'd admit aloud. The palace is quieter at this hour. Just the low hum of the city waking up outside, the distant clatter of bottles from a milk wagon, the metallic scrape of Gus unlocking the side door. You head straight for the booth, open the projector's housing, and begin your ritual inspection. It's your form of meditation. Brush, wipe, tighten, breathe. The air smells like metal dust and burnt carbon. You've grown so used to it that it almost smells like comfort. Almost. You take yesterday's reel off the shelf and unspool it carefully, holding it up to the light that seeps through the booth window. The images flicker across your palm, faces mid-laughter, shadows of props, a horse caught mid-gallop. You scroll past them slowly until, there. The odd frame. It's just one image, warped and darker than the rest. Hard to tell what it shows, though it looks like a silhouette of someone standing behind the camera. Or maybe behind you. You blink and it's gone, just an overexposed patch, perhaps. Still, you splice that frame out and replace it with a clean segment from the leader. No reason to tempt fate or fuel gossip. Lila arrives 20 minutes later, balancing a roll of sheet music under one arm and a small pot of violets under the other. Brought a touch of class for your little cave, she says, setting the plant on your desk. It'll die in a week, you reply. So will we all, she answers cheerfully. You can't help but laugh. Her sense of humor is as sharp as her playing. She leans against the wall and watches you rethread the reel. You look like you saw a ghost, she says, not unkindly. Just a strange frame, you admit. Probably nothing. Probably. She hums, low and thoughtful. You know, they say some films are haunted. The chemicals trap something more than just light. You raise an eyebrow. Who's they? People who spend too much time around nitrate fumes, she says with a smirk. Fair enough. You finish threading the projector and pull the shutters open slightly. The white beam cuts through the dust like a knife through smoke. It's beautiful in its simplicity, a controlled explosion of light. You could watch it for hours, though you'd rather keep your retinas intact. Historians still argue whether nitrate film was mankind's greatest invention or its most elegant form of self-sabotage. You've heard all the stories. Booths catching fire, reels igniting spontaneously, projectionists losing their livelihoods, and sometimes their eyebrows. Yet here you are, coaxing beauty from danger one reel at a time. Maybe that's the appeal. As the morning wears on, the palace begins to stir. Posters for tonight's feature arrive. The Sea Prince, a swashbuckling adventure promising thrills, romance, and the largest artificial octopus ever filmed. You glance at the artwork, a man in an open shirt brandishing a sword, waves crashing around him. The octopus looks suspiciously like laundry caught in a storm drain. Looks expensive, Lila says. Looks ridiculous, you counter. Same thing. By noon, the crew is bustling, ushers polishing brass fixtures, Mrs. Duval bringing trays of sandwiches, Mr. Hargreaves yelling about ticket pricing as if the fate of civilization depends on it. You stay in your booth, the calm eye in a small, chaotic storm. When the evening crowd filters in, excitement hums through the building. Adventure films always draw the loudest audiences, the kind that cheer when the hero punches a villain and gasp when he falls into water that's definitely 2 inches deep. Lila takes her place at the piano, grinning up at you through the shadows. You give the signal. The curtain rises. The beam ignites. The world turns liquid silver again. The film is pure spectacle, ships battling in painted seas, swords flashing under artificial moonlight, heroes rescuing heroines who faint exactly on cue. The crowd loves it. You can hear their laughter even through the booth's glass. But midway through the second reel, your heart skips. The projector shudders, not a lot, just enough to make you frown. The film jerks, the image blurs. You ease the tension arm, slow the reel, but the vibration continues, steady as a heartbeat. Then, flash. A single bright flare fills the frame, followed by the faintest whiff of smoke. You kill the lamp instantly. The screen goes dark. The audience murmurs. Down below, Lila keeps playing, seamlessly turning the silence into suspense. You blow across the gate, check the film path. No damage, no melt, just the faint scorch of overexposure. False alarm, you mutter, though your pulse hasn't slowed. The rest of the film runs without trouble. The audience applauds. Hargreaves breathes again. Afterward, when the theater empties, you sit in the booth staring at the still projector. The faint scent of singed celluloid clings to the air. It's not the first time you've had a scare, but tonight feels different. The flicker, the strange frame, now this. The booth feels watchful. Lila climbs the stairs after her last encore, still glowing from applause. Heard the hiccup, she says lightly. Thought you'd set fire to my accompaniment. Almost did, you reply. She studies you a moment. You should get some rest, she says softly. You're starting to look like the ghost in your reels. You smile wearily. Wouldn't be the worst fate. She squeezes your shoulder before heading out. Her perfume lingers for a moment, lavender and dust and something warm. Alone again, you douse the lamp, coil the reels, and let the darkness settle. You can still hear faint echoes of the day, laughter, footsteps, applause, but they fade quickly. You close the booth door and glance back through the window. The reflection stares back at you, faintly distorted by the glass. For half a second, it looks like someone else standing behind you, someone waiting patiently in the dark. You blink. Gone. You exhale slowly, shake your head, and whisper to the empty air, "Don't start haunting me just yet. I've got 3 more reels tomorrow." You don't tell anyone about the shadow in the glass. Not Lila, not Gus, not even Mrs. Duval, who has a theory for everything from stock prices to seances. You tell yourself it's nothing, sleep deprivation, imagination, the byproduct of staring too long into flickering light. But that doesn't stop the feeling that something is watching from the reel canisters when the room goes still. It's another cold morning, and the palace groans awake like an old ship. You light the arc lamp to warm the booth, the hiss filling the silence like a soft breath. The flame settles into its silvery glare, and you catch yourself studying the reflection in the lens again, half expecting a shape to appear where it shouldn't. Nothing. Just you, pale and tired, hair standing in every direction. You decide that's haunting enough. The new delivery arrives mid-morning. 3 short reels for an educational program the city council requested. Modern Wonders, the Electric City. You can already guess the content. Men in bowler hats pointing at power lines while children gape at light bulbs like miracles. You laugh to yourself. Audiences come to the palace for escapism, not municipal propaganda. Still, you load it up for a test screening. The images are crisp. Streetcars gliding past storefronts, women shopping, a fire truck racing down an avenue. The orchestra won't be needed for this one, so you hum under your breath, improvising a rhythm to match the silent parade of progress. Then, mid-reel, you spot it again. A flash. A figure in the corner of a frame, too dark to identify, too quick to be part of the scene. The camera pans past, and it's gone. Your stomach tightens. You freeze the reel, peer closer. The figure seems to stand at the edge of the image, as if staring straight toward the camera operator, or at you through time. You rewind, watch again. Same place. Same flicker. Probably just a worker walking into shot, you mutter. But even your voice sounds unconvinced. The door creaks. You nearly jump out of your skin, only to see Lila's familiar grin appear. Relax, she says. I knock, you don't answer. Thought maybe the machine finally swallowed you. You'd have my job if it did, you say, forcing a chuckle. Tempting. Less glamorous than piano, but at least you get your own booth. She eyes the flickering test screen. What are we watching? Electric poles and gentlemen with impressive mustaches. You've seen it before, you reply. She shrugs, drops into the stool beside you, and props her chin on her hand. So, have you thought about the talkie thing? You groan. You too. Of course. Everyone's talking about them, no pun intended. You glance at her. You worried? Worried? Nah. She pauses. Terrified? A little. You nod slowly. You've heard the same whispers from projectionists across town. Studios experimenting with synchronized discs, new machines that might make your craft obsolete overnight. Historians still argue whether the rise of sound films was progress or betrayal, but living through it, you can feel it's both. I guess, you say, silence never lasts forever. Lila sighs. Maybe it shouldn't. But I'll miss the quiet. There's something sacred about it. You look through the glass at the empty theater below. The kind of sacred that smells faintly of burning carbon and spilled cola. She chuckles softly. Exactly that kind. The matinee passes without incident, just a series of small-town comedies and one melodrama so overwrought that even the pianist can't save it. By late afternoon, the sun slants through the skylight like molten brass, and dust motes shimmer in lazy patterns. You take a moment to rest, leaning back against the booth wall. From below, faint laughter drifts up, Lila joking with the ushers, Gus barking at someone about gum wrappers. It's comforting, ordinary. But then, between blinks, something shifts. The reels on the shelf tremble slightly. You think it's your imagination, but one canister rolls an inch, then stops. The air feels thicker, charged. The hum of the arc lamp deepens, a low vibration you can feel in your ribs. You stand slowly, eyes scanning the booth. Nothing moves. Yet the light feels different. It flickers not with the rhythm of film, but like breathing, soft, deliberate. You step toward the lens and look into it. For just a moment, a face flashes there. Not yours. Not anyone's you know. A man's profile, half-lit, wearing an old-fashioned cap. His mouth moves soundlessly. Then, gone. You stumble back, heart pounding. The machine hums as though nothing happened. You yank the power, the beam vanishes, plunging the booth into dimness. The silence that follows isn't peaceful. It's watchful. Everything all right? Lila's voice calls from below. You force your voice steady. Lamps overheating. Just cooling it down. Don't melt the building, she warns lightly, and returns to her piano. You stand there for a long while, hands trembling slightly, staring at the now dark lens. Historians still argue whether projectionists ever hallucinated from long hours breathing chemical fumes. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe exhaustion has made you conjure faces where light bends. Still, as the night show begins and you relight the arc, you can't help but glance at the reel shelf again. All those spools of celluloid, each holding fragments of time, people frozen mid-motion, laughter trapped in emulsion. And you, the only one who can wake them. What if they remember? What if they don't want to sleep again? You chuckle nervously, shaking off the thought. You're getting poetic, you mutter to yourself. That's how madness starts. Down below, Lila begins her overture, bright and lilting. The screen flares back to life. You thread the reel, steady your breathing, and remind yourself that you're the master of the light. The booth hums again, obedient and calm. The reels turn. The story begins. And somewhere, faintly, between the flickers, you think you hear someone else breathe. You try not to think about the breathing. You tell yourself it was a draft through the booth vent, or maybe your own heartbeat echoing weirdly off the glass. But that night, when you walk home along the cobbled street, every flickering lamp post feels like another reel starting, another scene waiting to swallow you. The rain has started again, a thin drizzle that blurs the streetlights into soft halos. You pull your coat tighter, the damp seeping through anyway. There's comfort in the repetition of footsteps, one after another, steady as the spinning reels. Still, your mind keeps replaying that man's profile from the lens, frozen between frames. When you finally reach your boarding room, you kick off your shoes, hang your coat, and collapse into bed. The mattress springs complain, the sound oddly like a film crackling. You close your eyes, and instantly, the projector starts running in your head. Images flicker. The booth, the reels, the ghostly figure in the reflection. But this time, the figure turns toward you. His mouth opens, as if to speak, and you wake with a start, drenched in sweat. The faint morning light seeps through the curtains. You groan, roll over, and mutter, "Perfect. Even my dreams need editing." By noon, you're back at the palace, pretending none of it happened. Gus greets you with his usual grunt. You hear about the metropole down the street. You shake your head, threading the first reel. What about it? They're putting in one of those sound rigs. Real fancy. Microphone booth, electric speakers, the works. He spits into a rag, unimpressed. Whole world's going mad. You try to sound casual. Guess the future's noisy. Won't be long before we're out of jobs, he mutters. Machines will do everything, play sound, show pictures, even sell the tickets if you let 'em. You smirk. Don't worry, Gus. They haven't invented a machine grumpy enough to replace you. He chuckles once, the sound rusty but genuine. By evening, the palace fills again, couples in their Sunday best, children clutching candy, a few soldiers home on leave. You spot Lila at the piano, her fingers already dancing through a warm-up melody. Everything looks the same, but there's a current under it all, a faint sense of transition, like the city itself is exhaling before a change. Tonight's feature is The Sea Bride, a tragic romance that has everyone buzzing. You've already previewed the reels, endless ocean shots, longing gazes, and a heroic death by iceberg. It's melodrama distilled. You start the first reel, the familiar rhythm soothing you. Light flares, the story blooms across the screen. Below, Lila plays a gentle waltz that rolls like waves. Half an hour in, you notice it again. The flicker, not from the reel this time, but from the corner of the booth. The reflection in the small observation window trembles, as if someone just moved behind you. You turn sharply, but of course, no one's there. Then, something new, a soft scent, faint but distinct, ozone and something older, like old film stock left too long in the sun. It curls through the air, tugging at memory. You glance at the film rack. The same canister from the city reel sits slightly ajar, though you swear you sealed it tight this morning. You step over, heart thudding. The metal is cool under your fingers. You pop it open and freeze. Inside, the reel glistens faintly, the film strip trembling even though there's no draft. And for just a heartbeat, the surface looks liquid, like something beneath it is breathing. You slam it shut. Historians still argue whether early nitrate film really had a life of its own. You whisper, almost mockingly, to keep from shaking. Guess I'm not volunteering for the experiment. A light knock interrupts your panic. It's Lila again, halfway through the set break. You look like you've seen a ghost, she says, handing you a cup of coffee. You almost laugh. Working on it. She leans on the console. You ever wonder about all these people we show on screen? Most of them are dead by now, right? But here they are, walking and smiling over and over again. You blink. I think about it too much, actually. She smiles wistfully. Maybe that's why I like it. It's like cheating time. Everyone gets to live forever, at least for 90 minutes. Her words hang in the air, heavier than she means them to. She sips her coffee, glances toward the flickering screen below. You think they'll still need us when the sound films come. You look at her hands, calloused from years of piano, and then at your own, stained from oil and carbon dust. I think, you say slowly, we'll find a way to sneak back in, even if it's through the shadows. She grins faintly. Good answer. The bell rings, she heads back down, skirts swaying. You're left alone again with the hum of machinery. You exhale and return to your post. The light cuts across the dark, clean and perfect. You focus on the reel, the frame rate, the timing, anything but the thought that the film inside the canister might be moving on its own. As the final scene of The Sea Bride unfolds, the heroine clings to a piece of driftwood, eyes wide and glassy. The audience below gasps collectively, drawn into the illusion. And for a fleeting second, you understand why you keep doing this. You're not just showing stories. You're conjuring ghosts that people want to see. You make the dead dance again, and they thank you with applause. Maybe that's what the man in the lens was doing. Just watching, curious, waiting for his next cue. You chuckle softly, shaking your head. You're getting romantic again, you murmur. Outside, the rain drums harder. The building hums. The light keeps spinning. And in the brief silence between reels, you swear you hear a whisper from the canister. A single word, too faint to catch. The whisper doesn't leave your head all night. You try to replay it, to find the syllables hiding in the static between memory and imagination. It might have been a name, or maybe just the rustle of air escaping the film tin, but it stays with you like a half-remembered line from a dream. You arrive early the next morning, hoping daylight will make the palace feel less haunted. Gus isn't there yet, and the theater sits empty, seats covered with dust sheets, the faint smell of stale popcorn hanging in the air. Without the chatter of an audience, the place feels like a hollow cathedral of flickering ghosts. You make coffee in the projection booth, a ritual that never changes, and as the kettle hisses, you notice a small detail you could swear wasn't there yesterday. A smudge of fingerprints on the inside of the booth glass. Too high up for Lila, too far from where you stand when threading the reels. You wipe it away with your sleeve before you can think too much. The morning screening is for a school group. You run a reel of A Trip to the Moon, the old Melly's classic. The kids gasp when the rocket lands in the moon's eye, just as people did 20 years ago. A mainstream fact you recall while the reel spins. George's Mellies, the magician turned filmmaker, lost most of his films because he melted them down to sell the celluloid. You glance at the glowing screen and can't help thinking about all the vanished worlds that once flickered like this. Halfway through the film, the booth door creaks open behind you. You don't turn right away, figuring it's Gus or maybe Mrs. Duval, but when you glance back, the doorway is empty. Your pulse skips. You call out, softly, "Lila." Silence. You step to the threshold and peer into the corridor. Only the hum of the building answers. The long hallway stretches toward the staircase, lit by pale rectangles of morning sun. When you return to the projector, you notice something strange. The reel hasn't jammed, but the image on the screen below has slowed, ever so slightly. The astronauts move as if underwater. You check the frame rate. Perfect. The gears hum normally. Yet the world on the wall moves at half speed, the moon's grin stretching wider, too wide. You blink hard, rub your eyes. The moment you do, the image snaps back to normal. Too much coffee, you mutter. Or not enough. Later that day, Gus stomps in, tracking mud across the floor. You hear? The Metropole ran their first talkie last night. Place was packed. They said you can hear the actors talking. You smirk, trying to sound unimpressed. Next they'll make the pictures smell like the ocean. Mark my words, Gus says, jabbing a finger toward you. Once people can hear, they'll stop caring about seeing. That's how it goes. You grin. You might want to tell that to the blind. He snorts, shaking his head, and goes to fix a bulb. You almost tell him about the slowing reel, but stop yourself. He wouldn't believe you. Or worse, he would. By the evening show, you've convinced yourself it was all in your head. The crowd tonight is lively, full of chatter and perfume. The film is a new comedy short about a hapless waiter, and Lila's accompaniment bounces playfully across the keys. Everything feels normal again. Until halfway through the third reel, when the projector stutters, just once, barely noticeable, and for a split second, the frame shows something that doesn't belong. Not the waiter. Not the restaurant. A flash of something else. A street corner, maybe. A man standing still while everyone else moves. You rewind, frame by frame, but it's gone, like a skipped heartbeat. Historians still argue whether stray frames in old films came from errors, splices, or deliberate pranks. You whisper, forcing a grin. Guess I'm getting my own private screening. After the show, you linger in the booth long after everyone's gone. The reels are rewound, the lamps cooled, the seats below empty and still. You can hear the faint patter of rain again, that same steady rhythm that seems to follow you everywhere lately. You walk down to the theater floor, something you rarely do after closing. Without the light, the stage looks small, ordinary. The piano sits covered in its cloth, and the screen, so vast when illuminated, now droops like tired canvas. You stand before it, staring. Then you see it. A faint shimmer. Not a reflection, not your imagination. A soft pulse, like the ghost of a film still running long after the power's gone. You reach out and touch the fabric. It's cool under your fingers, but for a heartbeat you feel a vibration, a hum, faint but real. You step back. Okay, you say aloud, voice shaking only a little. You win. You're the star now. A low chuckle escapes you, half fear, half exhaustion. On your way out, you catch your reflection in one of the lobby mirrors. You look paler than usual, thinner. The lamplight halos your head like the flicker of a dying reel. And in the reflection, just behind your shoulder, you see movement. Someone standing in the dark booth window above, looking down at you. You spin around. Nothing there. You turn back to the mirror. The window's empty. The whisper comes again, faint and stretched, like it's traveling from another film entirely. You can almost make out the word this time. Stay. Your throat tightens. You grab your coat and leave the palace without locking the door. That night, lying in bed, you stare at the ceiling for hours. The hum of the projector still rings faintly in your ears. You tell yourself it's just habit, just the echo of routine, but somewhere deep down, you know the reel hasn't stopped turning. Not yet. You arrive at the palace the next morning determined to prove to yourself that nothing is wrong. You're just tired, overworked, and marinating in too much celluloid dust. You even tell yourself out loud, it's just film. Light and shadow. Nothing more. But the moment you step inside, you sense it. The air feels charged again, humming faintly, like the seconds before a thunderstorm. The posters in the lobby flutter slightly, though there's no breeze. The smell of oil and carbon and something faintly sweet, ozone, again, hangs heavier than usual. Gus is nowhere to be seen. Neither is Lila. You climb the stairs to the booth, footsteps echoing in the stillness. The projection room is dark, except for one thing, the arc lamp is already lit. You freeze. You never leave that lamp on overnight. It would have burned itself out. But there it is, humming quietly, its light spilling across the wall in a trembling beam. The reels turn, slowly. Your hands go cold. You step closer. The film unspools, gliding through the gate, but there's no reel on the take-up arm. It's feeding into empty space, like the machine is projecting light itself. On the wall, the image flickers, grainy, half-formed shapes, like someone else's dream. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat. A man tipping his cap. A crowd on a pier. You know this scene. It's not from anything in your collection. It's from the footage you saw days ago, the city reel. Only now, the figures move with eerie slowness, as if underwater, and their faces turn toward you. You swallow hard. Who's doing this? No answer, except the steady whir of gears. You step behind the projector and pull the switch. The lamp sputters out, plunging the room into shadow. The sound of the reel continues for a few seconds after the power dies, like an echo trying to finish its line, then silence. You exhale. The smell of hot metal stings your nose. That's when you notice something impossible. The empty wall where the image had been is no longer blank. It's faintly glowing. You can see the outlines of the figures still standing there, fading slowly, like an afterimage burned into your eyes. But as you watch, they don't disappear, they move. The woman in the hat lifts her head. The crowd begins to turn. Every face is looking at you. Your breath catches. You stumble backward into a chair, knocking over a reel. It clatters across the floor, the metallic ring slicing through the quiet. The figures flicker once, and vanish. The wall is just plaster again. You sit there for a long time, trembling. Historians still argue whether nitrate film can retain a ghost image after projection, a phenomenon caused by chemical residue. You'd read about it once, maybe in Scientific American. But what you just saw wasn't chemistry. It felt alive. You get up, collect the fallen reel, and force yourself to check every corner of the booth, convincing yourself it was a trick of the eyes. A reflection. A hallucination. Anything. Downstairs, you find Lila setting up early. "Morning," she says brightly. "You look terrible." "Thanks," you reply flatly. Something's off with the projector. Off how? You hesitate. It ran itself. She tilts her head, amused. "You mean you left it on?" "I didn't. Her smile falters when she sees your expression. You're serious. You nod. Maybe Gus came early, she offers weakly. Maybe, you lie. She studies you for a moment longer. You should get some rest. You've been living up there more than your own room. You start to protest, then realize she's right. You've been spending more hours with machines than people. That afternoon, you skip the matinee and walk through the city instead. The rain has stopped, and everything feels unnaturally bright, the puddles reflecting the clouds like mirrors. You buy a newspaper from a corner boy, the headline screams about the talkie revolution, and sit in a cafe, trying to feel normal. You overhear a group of film students at the next table. One of them says, "Did you hear about that projectionist who vanished mid-show? They said he just walked into the beam and disappeared." You almost choke on your coffee. The others laugh, dismissing it as urban legend, but the phrase sticks to your ribs. You pay and leave without finishing your drink. When you return to the palace, the lobby is empty. Even Gus seems to have gone home early. The booth door creaks as you open it, the smell of metal and heat greeting you like an old friend. You hesitate, then step inside. Everything looks normal. The reels stacked neatly, the lamp cold. You tell yourself to stop letting your imagination run wild. You're the projectionist. You control the light, not the other way around. So you thread the reel. You light the lamp. You start the evening show. And the beam flickers alive, crisp and clean. The first frames roll perfectly, a comedy short, harmless. You breathe easier. But in the corner of your eye, the wall shifts again. The faint outline of the woman in the wide-brimmed hat lingers, just for an instant. This time, she's closer. You blink, and she's gone. You grip the console so tightly your knuckles ache. "You don't get to scare me," you whisper, voice shaking. "I'm the one who brings you to life." The machine hums, steady as breath. You can almost hear a reply in the rhythm of the gears. "Are you sure?" You stare into the beam, watching dust dance like golden snowflakes. And for a heartbeat, you think about stepping closer, just to see where the light goes when it leaves the lens. Then the reel clicks empty. The story ends. And for the first time in years, you don't feel relief when the light dies. You feel its absence, like something you need to breathe. You don't dream that night. Or maybe you do, but the dreams look too much like the waking hours to tell the difference anymore. A faint light flickers behind your eyelids, the rhythmic click of gears keeping time with your pulse. When you finally wake, the sun is already up, but the sound doesn't stop. It takes you a moment to realize it's not in your head. The faint tick-tick-tick echoes through your small room. You follow it to the dresser, where a film canister sits neatly on top, one you definitely didn't bring home. Its label reads simply, "Test Reel, 1925. You stare at it for a long time before touching it. The metal feels strangely warm, as though someone just carried it from the booth. For reasons you can't explain, you tuck it under your arm and head back to the palace. The theater is quiet as a grave. The lobby lights are off, dust floating lazily in the dimness. You climb the stairs to the booth with a kind of grim resignation. The door creaks open as though expecting you. You set the canister on the table. "All right," you murmur. "Let's see what you've got to show me." You thread the reel into the projector. The film stock looks pristine, too pristine. Not a scratch, not a splice. As you feed it through, the faint scent of ozone rises again, sharper this time. It makes your eyes water. You strike the arc. The beam spills across the wall, brilliant and clean. The first image stutters to life. A street, familiar, but older. The same city, maybe 30 years ago. Horse-drawn carts, gas lamps, people walking fast like life was something they might miss if they slowed down. The footage is silent, of course. but you imagine the clatter of hooves and laughter. Then the frame pans, and you see it. The Palace Theatre. Your palace. Only it's new here, shining and proud, its marquee glinting in the daylight. A crowd gathers out front for the grand opening. You spot a boy carrying a crate of film, a projectionist you've never seen. You lean closer. The projectionist turns toward the camera. He looks exactly like you. You blink hard, step back, shake your head, but the image stays. He's not just similar, he's identical. The same nose, the same uneven hairline, the same slight tilt of the mouth you've seen in mirrors every day. The reel stutters, the image trembles. The crowd begins to fade, but the projectionist, your double, remains, staring straight into the lens. Historians still argue whether film ever captured more than light, you whisper. Some say it traps a fragment of the person, like a fingerprint of the soul. Your double lifts his hand. For a heartbeat, you think he's waving. Then you realize he's gesturing, beckoning. The machine hums louder, the beam growing almost too bright. You step back instinctively, shielding your eyes. And then the light hits something in midair. Not dust, not smoke, something denser. You can see it now, swirling inside the beam like mist, forming vague human shapes. Faces. Eyes. The woman in the hat. The man from the city reel. Dozens of them, crowding silently inside the light as if waiting for their cue. The air crackles. The smell of burning film fills the room. You lunge forward and cut the power. The lamp dies with a hiss, plunging the booth into darkness. Your breath rasps in the sudden silence. The reel continues spinning, slowly unwinding itself until it hits the end. The tail flaps helplessly in the dark. Then, a knock. Not on the door. On the glass window between the booth and the theater. 3 soft taps. You freeze. Something moves on the other side, faint and luminous. A silhouette, your silhouette, standing where the light used to be, staring up at you from the theater floor. You whisper, "No." It raises its hand again. You stumble backward, knocking into a chair. The figure fades, melting into the dark like ink dissolving in water. You stand there for what feels like hours, the smell of ozone still biting at your throat. When you finally open the door and walk down to the theater floor, the space is empty. The only sound is the rain beginning again outside. But something's different. You look toward the screen, and see faint impressions of faces rippling across it, like reflections on water. They aren't moving now, just waiting. The woman in the hat. The man from the pier. The projectionist who looked like you. You back away slowly. "Not tonight," you whisper. "You'll have to wait for the next show." The faces fade. The rain grows louder, drumming on the roof. You lock the booth, though you know locks won't matter to light. That night, as you lie in bed, the city outside glows dim and yellow, every lamp flickering in sync, almost like reels turning. You stare at the ceiling, half expecting the beam to appear there, painting moving shadows across the plaster. You think about the first projectionists, those who risked fire, blindness, or worse just to show a few minutes of dancing light. You think about the stories burned, melted, or lost forever. Maybe this is what's left when film refuses to die. Maybe the light remembers. You close your eyes, whisper a half joke to the dark, "You probably won't survive this." And though you mean it to yourself, something in the silence almost seems to laugh back. You don't go home the next night. Instead, you stay at the palace, sitting in the dark booth like a watchman guarding an invisible sea. You tell yourself it's to keep an eye on the equipment, make sure no more phantom reels appear, but deep down you know it's not the machines you're watching. It's the light. The light that's begun to feel like it's watching you. Outside, the city murmurs and fades into sleep. The theater rests like a body between heartbeats. Every sound seems amplified, the tick of cooling metal, the whisper of rain against the roof, your own breathing echoing off the glass. You make coffee you don't drink. You light a cigarette you forget to smoke. The night stretches thin. At some point, hours later, maybe, you realize there's music. Faint, distant, as if drifting through the walls. A piano. Lila's piano. You freeze, listening. The tune is one she often plays before a show, a gentle waltz that always reminded you of candlelight reflected on still water. But now it's slower, softer, playing itself somewhere in the empty theater below. You stand, hand hovering near the booth door. Lila, you call quietly. The music stops. You descend the stairs one cautious step at a time. The lobby smells faintly of damp carpet and old candy. The piano sits uncovered on the stage, its keys gleaming faintly in the dim light. You approach. The lid is open. The bench is empty. A single note plays. You freeze mid-step. Another follows, then another, slow and deliberate. The keys are moving by themselves. Your mind scrambles for an explanation, vibration, temperature change, mice, but your heart knows better. You step closer, breath shallow. The melody is unmistakably Lila's, only warped, notes bending slightly out of tune as though played from memory by someone who's forgotten what it means to breathe. You whisper her name again, softly this time. The piano stops. Then, faintly, a whisper from behind you, "Stay." You turn, fast. The beam from the projection booth cuts across the theater like a blade of light. You hadn't left it on, of that you're certain, but it's burning now, bright and steady. The figures stand inside it again. The woman in the hat. The man with the cap. The crowd from the pier. And there, half formed in the white haze, Lila. She's standing at the edge of the beam, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if calling your name but unable to make a sound. "Lila," you shout. She lifts a hand, reaching out. Her outline flickers, as though made of dust caught in sunlight. You stumble forward instinctively, but the light pulses, brighter, forcing you to shield your eyes. The figures shift and merge, dozens becoming hundreds, filling the screen, the aisles, the air itself. Every film you've ever shown, every face you've ever projected, is here, overlapping like memories that refuse to fade. You can hear them now, faint murmurs rising from within the light. Laughter, applause, sobbing, voices laid across decades. It's beautiful and terrifying all at once. The beam spills forward, washing across the stage, up the walls, over your hands. Your skin glows in it, veins turning silver. You can feel warmth, not heat, but a living hum, like the heartbeat of the projector itself. And then you hear her again, "Lila," clear this time. "Don't let it stop." The words vibrate inside your bones. You look up toward the booth. The reel is spinning faster now, the sound sharp and rhythmic. You stumble up the stairs, two at a time. The air crackles. The lamp blazes white. You can barely see as you reach the console, your shadow swallowed by brilliance. The reel is moving on its own, unwinding at impossible speed, frames whipping through so fast they blur into pure light. You try to stop it, but your hand freezes inches from the switch. Something, someone, is there beside you. A presence. You don't see it, but you feel it. The same awareness you've sensed for weeks, now close enough to breathe against your ear. "This is what you wanted," it whispers. "To make them live again." The words are calm, patient, and oddly kind. You find yourself answering, though your voice sounds far away, "Not like this." The presence chuckles softly, the sound like a reel rewinding. "There's no other way." The light intensifies. Below, the screen glows white, spilling across the seats, painting every inch of the theater in pure luminescence. It's no longer projection, it's immersion. You're standing inside the film itself. The faces appear again, clearer now, not ghostly but human. Actors, lovers, soldiers, children, each one staring at you as though waiting for permission. And you realize, they're not trying to haunt you. They are waiting to continue. You reach for the control, trembling, and instead of stopping the reel, you push it forward. The light flares, flooding the booth, swallowing everything in its path. For an instant, the world becomes silent, weightless, endless. Then, darkness. The lamp dies. The hum fades. You blink, dazed, your hands still on the console. The theater below is empty. The screen is blank. You stand there for a long moment, listening to the quiet. Your reflection looks back at you in the glass, pale, exhausted, but unmistakably yours. No figures. No movement. No voice, just stillness. You exhale shakily. Maybe that's the end, you whisper. Maybe every story runs out of film. But as you reach to power down the booth, you notice something new, a faint glow pulsing behind the projector. You lean closer. Inside the glass lens, tiny shapes move, frames still turning, even though the machine is off. The story hasn't stopped. It's just moved somewhere else. You find yourself smiling, quietly. "All right," you say to the empty room. "I'll stay a little longer." Outside, dawn begins to break. The rain has stopped. The first light of morning slips through the dusty window, mixing with the faint shimmer from the dead projector until the whole booth feels caught between two kinds of dawn. For the first time in weeks, you feel calm. And from somewhere, so faint you could almost miss it, you hear Lila's laughter, like the last note of a song fading into silence. You wake in the projection booth sometime after sunrise. The light filtering through the tiny window is warm and ordinary, no trace of last night's brilliance. Your back aches from the stool, and your hands are still smudged with grease. The air smells faintly of burnt carbon and dust, as it always does after a long run. You half expect to see something strange when you look toward the projector. A flicker, a whisper, a trace of that impossible light, but it's just there, still and silent. A machine again. You exhale slowly, feeling something unclench deep in your chest. Downstairs, the caretaker's voice echoes faintly, muttering about leaks in the roof. You can almost laugh. The world goes on. You step into the hallway. Dust motes hang like suspended snow in the sunlight. The theater feels smaller in the day, stripped of its shadows, its glamour. Rows of seats tilt like soldiers asleep at their posts. The piano sits uncovered, silent now, a few keys chipped from decades of applause. You brush a hand across the lid. The wood is warm from the sun. For a moment, you swear you feel it hum, an echo of a chord, maybe, but when you listen closer, it's gone. You cross the stage and pull open the heavy curtains. Outside, Market Street hums to life. Vendors call, trolleys rattle, newsboys shout headlines about some movie star's scandal. None of them would believe the world you just returned from. You think about telling someone, Lila, if she's still out there somewhere, but what would you even say? That you spoke to ghosts through light? That you stood between frames and saw time breathing? They'd call for the men in white coats before you finish the sentence. So you say nothing. You just tidy up, sweep the booth, check the reels. Routine feels like a lullaby now. There's a film scheduled tonight, a comedy this time, something cheerful. The palace has to keep running, after all. You imagine the crowd laughing, the orchestra striking up, the flicker dancing once more on the silver screen. Life pretending to life. Historians still argue whether the real magic of cinema lies in the stories themselves or in the human need to see light move through darkness. Standing there, hands in your pockets, you decide it doesn't matter. What matters is that someone is always behind the beam, watching, tending, believing. You climb the narrow ladder to the roof during your break, where you can see the skyline shimmer in the heat. The city is changing. You can already spot new theaters being built across town, their marquees promising Vitaphone sound. And talking pictures. In bold, impatient letters. It's strange, only a few years ago, you'd have laughed at the idea of actors who speak. But now you can almost hear their voices carried by the breeze, confident and clear. You smile at the thought. Maybe you'll learn the new machines when they come. Maybe not. You've given enough light to this one for a lifetime. For now, though, there's still one more show tonight. You head back inside, check the gate tension, polish the lens. Each motion is careful, unhurried, like a ritual. You know this world is fading, but you also know that every ending deserves its proper focus. The caretaker shuffles in later with a broom and a story about a talking crow he saw near the alley. You nod along, half listening, half drifting. He's a good man, mostly deaf to ghosts. As the sun dips again, the room turns gold, and the booth hums softly under your hand. You take a breath, feel the familiar calm descend. The first audience of the evening trickles in. Laughter, perfume, the rustle of programs. The orchestra warms up. You thread the film, lock it into place. The lamp is steady. When the lights go down, the hum rises. You press the switch. Light spills forward, steady and pure, cutting through darkness like memory itself. The faces bloom on the screen once more, joyful, nervous, alive. You lean back, eyes half closed, the machine's rhythm lulling you like the heartbeat of something ancient and kind. And though the reel hums and the audience laughs, you can almost hear a softer sound beneath it all, a quiet voice, barely there, whispering thank you. You smile. You're welcome, you murmur to the empty air. The booth feels warm again, like it did before the storm, before the phantoms. Only now, the light seems gentler, content. You know it will fade someday, replaced by sound and color and new kinds of magic. But not tonight. Tonight, it's just you, the beam, and the quiet turning of film through the gate. And somewhere far below, the world still dreaming in flicker and dust. You stay until the crowd has gone. The reels lie empty, coiled like sleeping serpents. You move through the theater slowly, almost reverently, running a hand along the worn velvet seats, the fading posters, the golden frame of the silent screen. Every sound is softer now. Every movement slower. The world exhales with you. Outside, the night air is cool. The street lamps flicker like miniature projectors, each casting its tiny film of moths and rain. You pull your coat close, feeling the last vibrations of the booth still pulsing faintly in your hands. You think about the stories, thousands of them, flickering past over the years. Faces you'll never meet again, laughter you'll never quite forget. You wonder if they remember you, too, the quiet guardian who kept them alive for one more night. Maybe that's all projection ever was, a conversation between ghosts and the living, carried by light. You close your eyes and see it still, the silver glow, the faces turning, the reel spinning slowly into the dark. And you realize you're no longer afraid of endings. They are just pauses between frames, waiting for the next beam to begin. You breathe out. The city hums around you, distant but kind. The light fades gently, naturally, as it should. You take one last look at the palace, standing proud and tired under the moonlight. Then you walk home, quietly, letting the night close around you like velvet curtains. And somewhere, in the hush between heartbeats, the reel keeps turning.